Most large companies have, at some point in their history, been guilty of offences that they'd rather the public forgot, but it's probably fair to say that few have had quite as many as Electronic Arts. When it comes to the world of gaming, there are an unfathomable number of controversies that have hit headlines over the years. If you like a bit of scandal, I recommend you check out our list of 10 times game developers went too far. But it's fair to say that when you think of the words unscrupulous business practices, there is only one company that consistently springs to mind. That's right, dear viewer, for this list we'll be poking about in the heavily soiled knicker drawer of one of gaming's most infamous corporations and airing all the dirty laundry they have to offer. The fact that they have an entire Wikipedia entry dedicated to all of the horrible things they've done probably says it all. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are the 10 worst things EA has ever done. Number 10. The Star Wars Battlefront 2 loot box scandal. Come on, you knew this one was going to be on here, so let's get it out of the way, and with a bit less of the attitude, please. Although now a very solid entry in the expansive library of Star Wars titles, Battlefront 2 is forever marred by the loot box scandal it faced upon release. If you're unfamiliar with the whole affair, Star Wars Battlefront 2 came under fire from incensed gamers for its loot box mechanic. On the surface, it might not seem like much of an issue, as loot boxes have long been employed by developers as a way of rewarding players with cosmetic items. EA, however, drew the ire of critics for the inclusion of unlockable characters and items that gave those purchasing the loot boxes a competitive edge. Eventually, and following much backlash, they backed down, withdrawing the option to purchase the boxes so that they could only be earned and removing the offending items. Sadly, and make note of this because it will become a recurring theme throughout this list, EA hasn't learned its lesson from this debacle and is currently in hot water with the UK government over whether or not loot boxes constitute gambling. Oh dear. Number 9. Mass Effect 3's ending. Now, there's some debate as to who is at fault for the ending of Mass Effect 3, with some of the blame levelled at BioWare. However, the disappointment felt by fans can at least partially be pinned on EA. Throughout the Mass Effect series, players were led to believe that decisions made earlier in the trilogy would ultimately affect the overall outcome of the story. Sadly for them, this wasn't the case, and the difficult choices players had made along the way didn't end up impacting the ending at all. The reason for this, at least in the mind of BioWare writer Drew Karpyshyn, is that the writing team was not given enough time to fully flesh out the story prior to launch, resulting in a rushed narrative and a poor ending that failed to deliver the payoff that had been promised. You'll be pleased to hear, however, that the follow-up to Mass Effect 3, Mass Effect Andromeda, was just as poorly received by audiences and critics due to, in large part, you guessed it, a rushed delivery. Why are they like this? Number 8. Dungeon Keeper's mobile remake. When it comes to reinventing media from the past, I consider there to be 3 hard and fast rules. 1. Don't do a remake if the original is fine as it is. 2. If you're going to do a remake, do your darndest not to piss off fans of the original. And 3. Never, ever attempt to cover the Beatles. Looking at you, Flaming Lips, that Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds cover is an abomination. Clearly, EA hadn't come across my regulations for reimagination excellence before they wheeled out the mobile version of Bullfrog's beloved 1997 strategy title, Dungeon Keeper. What most irked fans about the reboot was how thinly veiled of a cash grab the mobile game was, with microtransactions at every turn. It's not that gamers have a particular problem with free-to-play games. In fact, there are a number of titles that use that model incredibly well. Call of Duty Warzone, Killer Instinct, and Team Fortress 2, to name but a few. What players took umbrage at was the soullessness of the reboot and the obviousness of EA's intent to cash in on the nostalgia of the original game. Luckily, it looks like EA has learned from this, well, to an extent, as more recent titles like Apex Legends prove that they are able to create perfectly enjoyable free-to-play games without monetizing them to death. Number 7. Winning the Worst Company in America award. Twice. Bit of a twist this one, because technically this isn't something EA has done, but rather had done unto them. In April 2012, consumer affairs website Consumerist awarded EA the Worst Company in America title, along with a very fitting ceremonial Golden Poo trophy. Up against some tough competition, it's alleged that the ending of Mass Effect 3, see our earlier entry, was what tipped the scales, leaving companies such as Walmart, AT&T, and Bank of America mere runners-up. We appreciate that EA obviously didn't seek out this award. However, based upon their track record, it's hard to deny that they definitely brought it upon themselves, and so it's worth a mention on this list. What's also worth noting is their particularly salty-sounding response to the achievement, stating that they were sure that bank presidents, oil, tobacco, and weapons companies are all relieved they weren't on the list this year. We're going to continue making award-winning games and services played by more than 300 million people worldwide. Be that as it may, EA, at least that arms dealer pays his staff overtime. It's all good though, because they took the feedback on board, cleaned up their act, and definitely didn't go on to win the award again in 2013. Number 6. FIFA Ultimate Team Pack's lawsuit. Oh, EA, I'd ask if you'd ever learn from your mistakes, but your track record on this list so far, and we're only at number 6, pretty much answers that for me. Despite assurances that nothing like the Battlefront 2 lootbox scandal would ever surface again, here we are, a mere 3 years later with a lawsuit levied against EA, asserting that their lootbox mechanics in FIFA's Ultimate Team mode contravene gambling laws in the US and create addictive behaviours in players in order to generate revenue. Naturally, EA disputes this, but there are some uncanny parallels between the Ultimate Team packs and the aforementioned loot boxes, with the packs offering teams and players at random purchased with real-world money. The lawsuit is ongoing as of October 2020, but if successful, EA is likely to be forced to shell out millions of dollars in settlements. To add insult to injury, they also came under fire in September 2020 for promoting the packs in a children's toy catalogue, which even they have gone on record to admit was probably not super cool and definitely won't happen again. Forgive me if I'm dubious. Number 5. Unauthorized use of athlete likenesses. Based on the evidence we have so far, I think it's clear that EA's overuse of lootbox mechanics and microtransactions is simply to pay for all of the lawsuits they are constantly tied up in. So, if we can all just stop suing EA, we can probably get rid of these paywalls. In 2016, it came to light via a huge lawsuit that nearly 25,000 athletes' likenesses had been used by EA between 2003 and 2013 without authorization. Hang on, is that a typo? 25,000? Is that right? I don't know why I'm surprised. Throughout the period, EA churned out a number of NCAA football and basketball titles which featured the likenesses of thousands of college athletes. At the time, the NCAA did not allow its players to accept any kind of compensation for playing, a practice which has since been discontinued, thankfully, but beyond that, it turned out that EA hadn't even sought permission to feature the athletes in its games. Unfortunately for EA, this came back to bite them in the arse as a lawsuit was filed by former UCLA basketball player Ed O'Bannon, which resulted in the developer having to pay out a $60 million settlement divided among the players. In February 2021, EA confirmed there would be a new NCAA football title, now called EA Sports College Football, and that it wouldn't feature player names or likenesses. Number 4. Online Pass. It's fair to say that the ability to buy and sell second-hand titles is a must for the majority of gamers, with many AAA titles these days hitting shelves for 50 quid and upwards, and a heck of a lot more when you start bringing deluxe editions and DLC into the equation. Many players turn to pre-owned games in order to experience their favourite franchises without breaking the bank. Naturally though, this was a problem for EA, because if consumers' money isn't going directly into their incredibly deep pockets, how are they going to afford the Dom Perignon for the Christmas? Is that a joke? I think that's a joke I'm too poor to understand. What is that? Alcohol? Anyway, they need it for the Christmas party, apparently. The solution that they came to for this mighty problem was a simple one. Include a one-time use code with all new games which players will have to use to access online content. Want to play a second-hand title? Not a problem, my good sir or madam. EA was happy to furnish you with a fresh code. For a price. Naturally, this went down like a lead balloon upon its inception in 2009, with gamers recognizing this move for exactly what it was, nothing more than a money-hungry cash grab. While EA was the first to widely publicize this practice, you won't be surprised to learn that many other companies followed suit, but following much anger from the community, EA eventually backed down, scrapping the mechanic in 2013. Number 3. Cancellation of Project RAGTAG. Is the cancellation of Project RAGTAG the worst thing EA has ever done? No. Is it the thing EA has done that has most angered gamers? Also no. But as the old saying goes, we're not angry, we're just disappointed. Pegged to be a smashing little third-person action-adventure entry in the Star Wars gaming universe, Project RAGTAG started its development under Visceral Games back in 2013. At the time, the studio had been working on a pirate-themed project, but having made a deal with Disney to start development on several Star Wars titles, EA instructed Visceral to drop the swashbuckling fun times and get cracking on what would eventually become known as Project RAGTAG. Despite having the creative influence of Amy Hennig, writer of the first 3 Uncharted games, the game never came to fruition. Tensions reached boiling point between Visceral and EA over the direction of the game, and slowly but surely, EA removed staff from the project and redirected the other studios working on the title onto the follow-up to 2015's Star Wars Battlefront. Even though Visceral was able to create a demo in 2017 aiming to reignite interest, EA cancelled the project shortly after seeing it and shut down Visceral Games in the process. Which brings us very nicely to number 2. Buying and closing small studios. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, when EA was expanding its empire of evil, the company earned a bit of a reputation for buying small, successful studios and shutting them down almost immediately. During this time, EA very rapidly acquired Bullfrog, who created the excellent Theme Hospital, Maxis, the original brains behind the Sims franchise, and Pandemic of OG Star Wars Battlefront fame. Sadly, EA's intentions weren't all that noble. Rather than taking on these studios for their talent, it soon became apparent that they were only in it for their intellectual property rights. They quickly developed a rather recognizable modus operandi, acquiring a studio and forcing detrimental changes upon it before deciding poor performance that EA was almost always responsible for rendered them unnecessary, ultimately shutting them down. Following the appointment of CEO John Riccitello in 2008, EA appeared to be making progress in the not just acquiring studios then shuttering them department. However, their acquisition and subsequent closure of Visceral Games in 2017 proves they haven't gotten it completely out of their system. Would somebody mind getting us a days since EA closed a small studio sign, please? I think it would be beneficial. Number 1. Horrific treatment of employees. Now then, here's a friendly reminder. If you're running a company, you need to pay your employees for the work they do. You also need to not force them to work every hour God sends, and you should definitely give them occasional days off. You would think that all of that would be common sense to any decent human being, but sadly, an anonymous blog post from 2004 leads us to suspect that EA never got that memo. Detailing the frankly disgusting working conditions their partner had been put through, the poster, known as Disgruntled Spouse, shared that her husband was routinely forced to work from 9 AM until 10 PM, 7 days per week. Don't worry too much though, because he was occasionally given Saturday evenings off for good behaviour. What a treat! The silver lining of this sorry tale is that the post went viral, serving as something of a rallying cry to other overworked EA employees, several of whom successfully filed lawsuits. EA has since claimed that it has undertaken a number of changes to address the work-life balance concerns of its employees, including proper long-term project planning and compensation for staff. However, reports as recent as 2019 indicate that enforced overtime is still firmly part of the company's culture. And that's our list. What other horrible, horrible things has EA done over the years? Tell us about them in the comments below. You can follow myself and TripleJump on Twitter here, and while you're at it, why not support the things you enjoy by having a look at our Patreon. Finally, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and thanks for watching.